The one program I really like is this Photo Voice. I love it because it's not only teaching those kids that can get a better understanding and they can get educated, but then they're able to then take that message to their peers.
I'm Cassidy and I am Photo Voice.
The only way that we reduce demand is if we're providing treatment.
My name is Sarah and I am Photo Voice.
My name is Olivia Affinato and I am Photo Voice.
One of the things I think we have to change is the culture of that there's a pill for every problem.
My name is Aaron West and I am Photo Voice.
I'm Rebecca and I'm Photo Voice.
My name is Chris and I am Photo Voice.
This is often coupled with our Photo Voice project when we do presentations. Photo Voice is a mobile presentation that includes photography and quotes from youth that have been engaged in the project across the Greater Brockton region. You'll find a bunch of different things, and they could be as obvious as a small package. This is supposed to be marijuana in this case. That's going to be something really obvious. To things that are less obvious, like balloons, can be used to package drugs, so that potentially could be an indication that they've bought or sold. Things that are stretchy potentially could be used as some form of a tie-off. So I'm the Director of Prevention Services for High Point Treatment Center, and that's been an evolution over the past 6.5 years. We started with a single grant in the city of Brockton to address opioid overdose specifically. Kids that I sat next to were shooting OxyContin. We knew 3 things about OxyContin at the time when I was in high school: that it was expensive, that it was a prescription medication, and that it got you really high. We didn't know that chemically our brain doesn't know the difference between that medication and heroin, and it really caused a devastating impact, certainly in Massachusetts in the Northeast, but ultimately nationwide, where the leading cause of unnatural death in the United States is from overdose with prescription painkillers, killing more people than heroin and cocaine combined. So it's important to know what those are. If you saw this, you might think it's part of a broken pen or some type of implement.
When we talk about addiction, there is a huge stigma attached to it. People view addiction as a moral feeling. It's a choice. Why don't they just stop? There's just a total negative perception about the disease of addiction, but a lot of times people don't have an actual understanding of addiction as a brain disease, and that no one ever chose this lifestyle. Yes, that first time that you use what is a choice, but after that, your brain has been hijacked.
We need to recognize that addiction is a disease. If we treat addiction like a crime, then we're doing something that's not scientific, that's inhumane, and it's frankly ineffective.
This is not strictly an urban problem. We know very much so that it is embedded, and in some cases more so, in suburban communities than in urban communities.
When we prosecute people, what people fail to sometimes realize is that we deal with the victims in all these cases, and we can never make them whole again. And that's a frustrating, very complicated and very frustrating process for us. Having said that, one of the things we can do is start to think about, well, then how can we be part of the prevention piece, right? So if we were an emergency room, and I use this expression sometimes, if we were an emergency room and we were a doc and people kept coming in, kids kept coming in with head injuries because they were riding their bike without a helmet, don't we as a DA's office, don't we as to use this example, emergency room, have a responsibility to tell the community, you got to put helmets on your kids?
You know, we talk about the stigma that's involved here, and we're trying to dispense with that, to do away with that and treat it for what it really is, which is an illness. This is something that no one starts out in life and says, you know, I think I'm going to be a heroin addict, is what I'm going to be. You know, you've got people that want to be doctors, lawyers, police officers, pilots. No one makes that choice, but it happens very frequently.
It has affected everybody in some way. So whether it is, you know, you know somebody who knows somebody, or it is that you're walking to work and you're seeing it. So it's definitely having an effect on everybody. There are some people who are less sympathetic to others, and some of those people, the reason why, it's because it has personally affected them, and people deal with things in different ways. So, you know, we are trying to change the stigma. We are trying to help people in different ways understand that, but sometimes when I'm working with people, you know, I try to say, don't be so quick to judge, because that person who sometimes says, oh, they're all junkies, the reason why they may be saying that isn't necessarily because they're uninformed about it. It actually may be because their brother is suffering from a substance use disorder, and that's how they're dealing with it.
This bottle looks like a normal bottle, but they are sold at convenience stores, online, tattoo shop as money hides. Hairspray, look in the top, see if you can unscrew the bottom, because they do sell hides and they're gonna feel like they have hairspray in them, but potentially the bottom could unscrew.
Too often we thought, well, we're the adults, we're the experts, we know what kids need, we were kids once. Well, that was 30, 40 years ago. So in some cases 50. So the idea is that we gotta remember that we can learn from them. We need to make them part of the process rather than we're doing it to them. We need to do it with them.
Some of these individuals feel that no one listens to them. So it's a powerful project and way to get people to hear and understand them.
Communities have been more willing to talk about it, but when we look at traditional health education around prescription drugs and heroin, it really only seemed to ever be scratching the surface. So in 2011, I went to a national conference in California on coalition work around substance use, and there's people that come over from all over the country to come and sort of talk about what are the best initiatives in prevention, what people are doing, you know, in rural, urban, suburban communities. And I went to a training on Photo Voice.
A picture says 1,000 words, so somebody can interpret a picture to mean one thing when it meant something totally different to another person, and that is why Photo Voice can be so powerful, because you see one thing and then you read the quote that goes along with it that came from a young person, and you're like, wow, I didn't even think of that.
We need to come up with a strategic plan. So we all need to figure out what's our piece of this and how do we do it across the spectrum again. So things like, how do we engage kids so that they have an understanding of what the nature and extent of the problem is. And the peer-to-peer is can be an amazing way to share information and have them express themselves. So to me, adults have got us into this problem, and in many ways, kids can help us get out of it, because they can start to say, they can teach us insights about what they see on a daily basis or what they see in their homes or in their communities that we might not get a perspective of at the DA's office.
One of the great things about being able to use media as a platform is that you're able to get sometimes broad range messaging out and sometimes very specific range.
The information I had before the Photo Voice was kind of what we get in our everyday life. Don't do it, it's bad for you.
You have health classes and everything, and you learn about it in the health classes, but they don't really go into depth really about like how it affects people as well. It just kind of talks about what drugs are out there.
The school provided education, but it was more of those videos of like the people who are really addicted and like ruin their lives. So like I guess it was like kind of a way for us to not do it, but it didn't really tell us the dangers of it. It just said like, hey, you'll get addicted and don't do that.
You know, the idea before is that, you know, we would say, well, let's bring people, make people aware of the problem, and we'd hand out brochures, and we'd have a table somewhere, and we'd maybe have balloons and hot dogs or t-shirts or whatever, and it was kind of like a very ephemeral kind of, hey, look at the problem, right? Well, now with social media, you know, we have the ability, and the kids have taught us this, the ability to get the message out, and a real clear message, over and over again, kind of theory of redundancy, over again, over to many more people. And then, in fact, they become almost disciples, if you will. They're able to then spread that message on to their network of people.
I kind of try to ask them, you know, so when you go out this first week, the question is going to be, to what extent are drugs an issue or a problem in your community? And we kind of brainstorm what they think of when they hear that question.
A day in the life of a Photo Voice participant would usually go out together and take pictures of what we feel best represents overcoming drugs and opioid addiction.
And then I send them out, and for the rest of the week they get to take pictures to answer sort of what we brainstormed about or what they think of as they go along.
It was questions like, how are drugs a problem in the community? How can we prevent them?
But as the weeks progress, it's really interesting to see just how much they're bought into the project and how much they really get creative and do their own thing and really are able to think outside of the box.
We would come back together as a group and talk about each one of the pictures that we took, and we would take multiple pictures so that we would have a lot to talk about, and everyone would give their ideas or beliefs of what that picture stood for.
Well, my thoughts with this picture were, it shows the girl kind of like in shock. So I think the message I'm trying to send is that a lot of the times when people get addicted to drugs, they don't expect to get addicted. Like, no one really signs up for that. So it can kind of show like how in the blink of an eye everything can change, and like she's just devastated by the impact that it had on this girl's life.
Looking at a picture of my mom's hand holding a cigarette while driving, and I thought this was, you know, really a motivational piece because my mother said herself, it's a nasty habit that she would never want me to get into. And I think it really defines her that she's been smoking her whole life, and she can't really, you know, stop.
The people who owned the hospital before kind of just left it, and they stopped taking care of it, and now it's, you know, clearly falling apart there. And I feel like addiction is the same thing. It's kind of like you just stop caring about your personal well-being, because drugs have a lot of adverse effects on your health, and just over time the drugs kind of break you down, as does nature, and not taking care of the hospital breaks the hospital down.
When you're in middle school and like you're a kid, like you kind of always think of like the drug addicts and the dealers to be like the stereotypical, like in an alley, like the kids that you would expect it from. But as you get older, you find that that's not the truth, and it can literally be anyone. So, like in this picture, I like that because this girl just is like any other girl. Like you wouldn't expect her to be a drug dealer or an addict or whatever.
They think it's for the party and stuff, but they don't see that they're alone. They don't see that people sometimes give up on them. So when you see the footsteps, you see that there's the drugs is fun. The party, the people you hang out with is fun. But once you have a problem, you're by yourself. And you're bare like a tree. You have your roots, you have your problems, and you have to deal with it.
The prescription drugs, but it also has a heroin needle in it. So I think it shows that there's more than one way of getting drugs and using drugs, and these are kind of two different extremes, because one might feel safe while the other, pretty much everybody knows the dangers of heroin. And it's like kind of a scarier drug because it's like, again, it's not given to you by your doctor, so you know that it's kind of more wrong than prescription drugs, even though they can actually be on the same level.
When I took this picture, the idea that I had in my mind was that The hurdle kind of represents overcoming drugs, and from the picture, in the viewpoint of the picture, the hurdle looks so big. So the way people are addicted to drugs, the way they see the hurdle is so big. They see overcoming drugs and getting off and becoming clean is hard. But once you get over the hurdle, it's just blue skies and it's positiveness.
But there was one girl in the group had really been touched by this project, and she brought in a picture that took my breath away. The photograph was of her holding a baby, and in the shot, sort of in front of her, she has her back to the camera. In front of her is a bassinet. And at that point in my life, I had a 9-month-old child, and I was pregnant with my second child. The bassinet in the photograph is the bassinet that I own that both of my sons slept in. The bottle sitting next to her is a bottle I own. And behind her, it's her back silhouette are 2 prescription pill bottles, talking about how she wants to be a loving mother, she wants to be engaged, but that this is always on her back and that she carries it with her. And that photograph was so powerful to me because of where I was in life. And what it showed to us as the facilitators of this is that each and every individual who comes and sees these photos, whether they're from the original Brockton project or they're from the project that was completed in Bridgewater Raynham, as a viewer, you're going to bring your own life experience and your own perspective, and it's going to speak to you on an even deeper level than it spoke necessarily to the participants of that project.
It's hard for youth to express themselves in traditional ways that adults can. So having them be able to have this opportunity to do that, I think is very important. You know, I think when the project first came to them, they all were skeptical about it and like, oh, what is this? I don't know how to, you know, take pictures, and this is weird and I don't want to do this. And, you know, the photos came out, and, you know, when people see them, they think that they're professional photographers, and they're just in awe at these great creations that these youth made. And, you know, having the reflections and being able to have these conversations with youth, it's just absolutely amazing to see what they've done.
People are always going to do drugs. It's never something that's going to be completely eliminated from this earth. So our goal shouldn't be to get rid of drugs. It should be to be there for people to help them and not stop it altogether. Like, obviously that'd be awesome, but I think it's more important to focus on helping people heal and letting people feel comfortable turning towards different people so they can stop once they're in it.
Still image that I've captured tells a story, and I think that's the key highlight in photo voice. When you would capture any, you know, objects or whatever in your environment influences you and reminds you of our topic at hand in photo voice.
I think that photography was an interesting way to portray the message, because with teenagers you don't really want to like do research or write an essay because you do that all the time for school. So I think that getting to do it in an artistic way was a lot more fun and engaging. So you could tell a different story without using your words. You could show a picture, and then in that case everybody else could come up with their own message for the picture.
It's helped me to realize everything about drugs. It's given me more information about drugs, and I feel like the reason people get addicted is because they're not aware of what drugs can do, and Photo Voice has helped me become aware of that.
It knows no limits. Opioid addiction cuts across all socioeconomic classes, all communities, racial groups, ethnic groups, religious backgrounds.
And almost all of the kids always say that they just learned to look at this disease as a human issue, and that there is a person underneath their addiction, and we need to take care of them, and we need to love them, and they deserve the help just like anybody else. And that's sort of been a proud moment for me when I hear them say that.
When someone sees that someone is going through an addiction, they judge them before anything or before asking how they got there or what they can do for them. They see their behaviors, they see how they're acting, they see their outcome, they see how they look, how they dress, how they're talking now, but they don't see what caused it. They don't see what's inside and how they're feeling. So they choose to judge them and just leave them alone and say, oh, they're not good enough to hang out with me, instead of saying, no, you're worth it and I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna be a good friend, I'm gonna be a good family member. And we should always help the people, even though we sometimes don't know how to help them.
There's so many opinions of what this picture could mean, and it can mean so many different things to other people. With an essay, it's just black and white. With pictures, you can express it with colors and viewpoints and different ways to take the picture, and I think that's what makes this better than writing an essay.
I've seen my own generation be destroyed by opioids, whether it's the cousin who passed away from an overdose, whether it's the kid who sat behind me from 6th grade through 12th grade who died of an overdose. I've seen my generation be absolutely destroyed by this. And if there's something that we can do that can leave a mark, that can push the dial that much further, that's what I need to be doing. And I don't see myself doing anything else.
So, you know, I don't know too many people that haven't been affected by this. My family has directly been affected by this. So I've always kind of kept that in my back pocket and not always shared that as much as I should. Probably shouldn't do it on camera. But having said that, I think the idea is that what you want to do is try to make a difference. You could do a lot of professions, but what you want to do is try to make a difference in somebody else's life. And you want to try to affect some positive change. And this is one of those issues that's, I mean, we have people dying. We have families that are losing their brothers and sisters and mothers and children, and I don't know that there's anything right now more important than this. So to me, I can't say it's satisfying. I can't say it's gratifying, because I wish that we didn't have to address this issue. I wish we were addressing, you know, something else that wasn't as deadly or as crippling as it is to society as this is. But I suppose that, you know, my goal is to, at some point, be able to, you know, look myself in the mirror and say, hey, we did everything we could do. We emptied our bucket. We tried everything we could possibly do. And we used our brains, and we used our energy, and we used our passion, and we tried to get everyone involved and be collaborative and use as many resources we could to address this issue, eradicate it at best.